And I don't know if anyone's looked at the sheet and seen this, but Adam does not pick his prospects well.
The question is, does Max make the playoffs if he doesn't sell?
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the first and hopefully last episode of the Fuck the Nats podcast.
That's the thing. It's like when you're me and like you know that you're a fucking idiot, stick with Christian Vasquez and he will lead my team in steals again.
The memories that come to the surface most clearly are me sorting my baseball cards one way one night and then completely redoing them the next night.
Actually, I'm going to reframe this. JD, why don't you start by talking about Dylan Beavers?
Apologies, I couldn't hear your question because the audio went out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another season of Fuck the Nats podcast. We got some big news in this one. Got 3 new owners in the league. This is going to be a little bit of a special version. We are not going to have any video on this one. It's going to be an audio-only podcast. We are going to be taking a look at the FTN Dispersal Draft, each imagining ourselves as one of the owners, going through, making our picks, trying to figure out, how to structure these teams best. Maybe a little guesswork on, what we think each individual person's going to do based on what we know with their personality. So with that said, Drew, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I will be taking the role of Ryan Ulrich today. He didn't win the silent lottery that we had. He actually was deferred the first overall pick. Graydon ended up winning that. He chose to pick second. Adam will be drafting as Graydon today. And then Jacob picked second where he wanted to pick. And he chose to have the third overall pick in this dispersal draft.
Great choice, I think.
Ben will be drafting for him. So that leaves Ryan here with the first pick. And I have to say, I guess, with him being a Yankees fan, this could not have set up better for him, I would think. I mean, this has got to be Aaron Judge, right? Like, there's no chance
doubt.
It's not. Yeah, so
because you even have to consider, right? Because the fact that Aaron Judge, obviously great player, but even if Ryan says, "Hey, I want to trade him," his value is sky high. Could really help Ryan acquire some other pieces he might want to get. Super, super valuable.
Yeah, Yankees offense got a boost recently. I think with Shohei out of the AL, he's just about a lock for MVP as long as he stays healthy. Now, that's not to say that I don't think there are other first-round quality players on this board. I know we'll get to them, but I think Aaron Judge, safest value play for Ryan so far.
Okay, so we want to move on to
take my second pick here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be cosplaying as Graydon. Big role model of mine in all ways, except for his personality and fantasy baseball skill. So I'll be going with who I think is probably the most consistent offensive contributor in this top 3. That'll be Corey Seager. Definitely he's an older player when it comes to taking dynasties like this, but what he showed last year's man can just rake. He doesn't really steal, but that's, it shows that he's just going to age gracefully. I think if the injury stuff stays behind him, he's just like a nice guy you can plug into your lineup every day and will give you just counting stats on counting stats on counting stats. Love Corey here.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge high floor guy.
Real quick before we get to your pick, Adam, I think if Judge goes first, like we think he does, the choice comes down to Seager and probably one other one, right? Trey Turner, we would think.
Yep.
What was your thought process between Seager versus Trey Turner, real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to go pure win now, maybe you do go Trey for those steals because it's something that Corey will not be giving you. And you can argue that Trey Turner can give you Corey Seager counting stats, but Corey Seager cannot give you Trey Turner steals. With that being said, Trey was very inconsistent last year. Obviously, had that really rough start and then turned it around to look like the guy that we all thought he was going to be, but then tailed off at the end. And I really just think if I'm investing a first-round pick, I want a guy who is going to be consistent both this year and for the rest of his career. And I think that, that inconsistency and maybe relying too heavily on speed for his value scared me off of Trey here.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? Corey Seager, 1 year younger, makes a difference. So with my first two picks, my whole thought process going into this was looking at each individual team, figuring out where the general weaknesses are between the three of them. Now, for me personally, that's the infield and pitching. So with my first two picks, I'm going the guy we just talked about, Trey Turner, and then I'm taking Elly De La Cruz. Obviously, Elly didn't have a fantastic second half compared to, when he first showed up in the league, but I don't think there's a single person who's doubting his ability and what he can do. And, God knows how high his ceiling is. So I don't really think anything, more needs to be said about those guys. We know exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the Elly De La Cruz pick obviously makes sense value wise, and where people are viewing him right now. Definitely scares me just in terms of whiff rates, strikes out a ton, hits the ball in the ground a ton. I mean, I know these are like standard young player problems that can be fixed, and when or if he does, like, oh my God, 40-40 guy regularly, which is a crazy thing to say. You usually and should not be like putting those sorts of expectations on a young player. But just in terms of like what I think you're getting this year and maybe the next couple of years is like very low OBP numbers, and maybe underwhelming home run numbers for what you would expect out of a guy, coming into the second round. But definitely in terms of Dynasty League, in terms of potential, sky's the limit here.
Right.
Moving on to my second pick, you're going to notice a theme in the top couple picks for me here. It's that the Texas Rangers are really, really, really fucking good. And I'm going to go with Adolis Garcia here in the second round. I am historically not an Adolis Garcia guy. I've doubted him for many years upon years that he strikes out too much. He can't make contact. I think last year was a fluke, but he keeps proving me wrong year after year. He hits tanks. He knocks in runs. I think it's just about as safe of a run producer as you can get in this entire draft. I think it's an easy lock here.
Yeah, great pick. I think here, Ryan, we've had all MLB players go so far. I think it might be time to take the first prospect, but he might not be a prospect for long. The expectation is that Jackson Holliday will be up on the opening day roster for the Orioles. Where exactly he's going to play and how much, not exactly determined yet. But obviously, as the number one overall prospect in baseball, I think it makes a lot of sense to take a swing here with him projected to be up so soon. So Jackson Holliday is the pick here for myself and Ryan. And then I think another high upside pick that we can expect to see opening day from the prospect ranks is maybe the best pitching prospect that we've seen in 5 years, at least as long as we've had our FTN league going. I don't think we've seen, I guess when we first began the league, we had Casey Mize. He was the number one overall prospect in baseball as a pitcher, but I think Paul
MVP.
Skeens is, I think Paul Skeens is viewed as, better than Casey Mize was. So big swing here for Ryan, but two players who should help as soon as this year and can help contribute to that win now with Aaron Judge, but still focusing on that youth. That's why these are two of the top 5 prospects in baseball, right? So great for FTN, great for MLB, good picks for Ryan. Adam, who you got with your third pick?
Yep, going back to the Lone Star State with, you mentioned Jackson Holliday being the number one prospect in baseball, but I think I'm going to go with a guy who is in my mind, the number one prospect in fantasy baseball. That is Wyatt Langford. Tools are loud as hell. Already talk about him debuting on opening day. Can hit dingers, can run, OBP skills. He'll stay in the field every day. He's a decent fielder, just crazy athlete. I think with Jackson Holliday, there's some concern in my mind, I'm not obviously this isn't a bad comp or outcome, but like the Wander Franco empty batting average fallacy. that like there might not be a ton of power and there might not be a ton of speed in there. So while he might be an unbelievable everyday player for the Orioles for the next 25 years, it just in terms of my fantasy lineup, I would much rather have Wyatt Langford on my squad here. So that's what I went with.
Okay. So, and again, I go back to what I was talking about in terms of the overall weaknesses between these three teams. So with my next two picks, I'm going starting pitching. And whereas, Drew went ahead and he got the best prospect pitchers, I'm going to go ahead and grab the two best current pitchers available, which was, in my mind, Kodai Senga and Max Fried. Obviously, Kodai Senga was unbelievable last year. Absolutely fantastic. Max Fried, when he's healthy, absolutely fantastic. I don't think there's two other pitchers available on this board that are going to get you quite the production that these two guys will. Getting them already gives you, a good chunk of your rotation filled out, and you never have to worry about them, barring injuries, but that goes for every pitcher. So I think I'm going to turn this back over to Adam for his next pick.
Yeah, definitely disappointed to see, the two, I'd say, aces of this class come off the board. Definitely pitching a weakness across the board. So to be able to lock that in was very enticing here. But I will go with my final Texas Rangers pick with Evan Carter. Very impressed with what he did in the playoffs last year in the stretch run. Obviously works a full count like it is absolutely no one's business. I think he's got a great OBP floor to go on top of, decent speed and power as well. I think he's, for a young player, a lot of future ahead of him and a guy who's already playing. So, going off of almost what Drew was saying with win now and win later, I think Evan Carter fits into that very well. So off to Drew for your next pick.
Yeah, that's 3 outfielders, 4 offensive players taken for you, but we've seen how volatile pitching can be. Of course, looking at Ben's first 4 picks, Jacob's first 4 picks here, right? You get 2 pitchers and 2 infielders. I love what Ben said about looking at where these 3 teams, when you aggregate, you aggregate all the assets together and you look at where all the best players and like the weakest positions are, you really can start to see, as Ben was saying, how weak the pitching and how weak the infield is. And so to really target those early, I think everyone's draft looking strong now. The 4 Rangers picks is hilarious, but I feel like Graydon would be okay with that if that's how the board ended up with him. He is a Texas resident. I'm sure he would love it if the board fell somewhat like this when we actually go to do this. With my 4th pick, I'm going to take Mr. Floor himself, Ha-Seong Kim. I think he's good for in that offense. Even I've brought this up to quite a bit of people in the league as we've started discussing the dispersal draft, and I think I might be higher in Ha-Seong Kim than most. But I think that even if he has some statistical regression, he is still going to be with a team that should be better on offense this year, just by virtue of not being so unlucky as they were last year, which is going to boost his volume numbers a bit. So I don't see too much of a downgrade in terms of fantasy performance here for Ha-Seong Kim. Obviously helps fill out the roster with his multi-positional eligibility. So big Ha-Seong Kim guy here. Not sure he'll actually get taken this high when we do the dispersal draft, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is. The second pick, we have the number 1 prospect. Let's go with the number 2. The other Jackson Chourio, should be in the Brewers outfield starting from opening day this year. I'd kind of be shocked if he isn't. Look, power, speed, combo guy. He could be at his ceiling, maybe an Adolis Garcia type of player. So good to grab him here. Super young, super fun, super exciting. Adam, we'll go to you.
Yeah. This is where Jacob Feitlinger over here taking Senga and Fried back to back really comes back to bite because you really love to go some pitching after 4 offense rounds in a row. I went with Tristan McKenzie here, my pick for the best of the rest of this bunch. Still fairly young, has definitely shown crazy ceiling. Curveball is vicious. Strikeout numbers are good. It's one of those things where you just sort of need to get a guy here. And I'm not, overly thrilled about McKenzie as an ace. especially in terms of his dependability. But in terms of what was available, I think it was that time, and he's the guy.
Jacob Feitlinger is actually my brother's real name. So going on to my pick, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here and switch it up. So I'm going to actually take Francisco Alvarez here. And my thought process behind that is, currently he has, catcher eligibility. We'll see how long he actually remains a catcher and doesn't just move to full-time DH, but the dude just flat out rakes. I would not be surprised in the next season or two to see him hit 30 bombs, as the Mets continue to get better as a team. Obviously, that's going to come with the RBI total as well. So for the moment, he's going to fill that catcher spot, but even if he gets bumped to solely DH, perfectly fine with that. Just absolute flat out can rake. With my next pitch, again, going to load up on as many pitchers as I possibly can. Going to be taking Ryan Pepio here. Again, Dodgers prospect pitching. What more can you say? They're fantastic at developing them. Got no doubts that Pepio is going to have another great season under his belt behind what is now going to be an incredible team. So that win total, I expect it to be pretty high for him.
Yeah, I like Pepio, not my favorite Dodgers pitching prospect, but like you said, the floor of just being on that team is so helpful for him. If he can just, lengthen out his outings, definitely not a guy that has pitched deep into games a ton before. Obviously has that reliever eligibility now, has come out of the pen before. Something to keep out, just an eye out on if he, can actually pitch enough to get those high win totals that will bolster that floor. I'm going here, like I said when we mocked this originally, I am running to the podium with Royce Lewis here with my next pick. Young player, freak injuries. He's been a top prospect for forever. The pedigree is there. And if the injuries were more, not freaked, so to say, like they could reoccur, I might be a little scared off here. But the guy can't tear his ACL every year. I just don't buy it. It just can't happen. And when he's played, he's been electric. He hits bombs. He also hits bombs. And on off days, he hits bombs. Grand slams predominantly. I like adding another shortstop, third baseman here. Obviously, third base is a very, very shallow category in our league and in baseball overall, fantasy-wise. So love being able to shore that up here with a player who, might swing and miss too much, might strike out too much, but, hoping that these contact issues get sorted out. And in the meantime, I'll take a pretty easy 30 bombs, 10 steals out of like a 20-something-year-old. So we take that easily.
It'll be interesting to see what positional eligibility ESPN gives Royce Lewis, I guess this season, but also going forward. I know Minnesota was looking at using him in the outfield last year, like in center. So let's say, just hypothetically, real quickly, he does only really have outfield going forward. That is outfielders with 4 of your first 6 picks, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly have the space for it in the league, but that is quite an elite outfield. And obviously, you would love to see Royce Lewis retain that third base eligibility, to your point, very shallow position in the league. So with my 6th pick here, I'm going to go back-to-back pitchers here. The fact that Tristan McKenzie's going round 5 is blowing my mind. So I really think it might be time here to grab some guys that I think one's a great floor guy and one's theoretically a floor guy, notwithstanding injury, and a great ceiling guy too. So I'm going to take Walker Buehler back-to-back with Jay Mont, Jordan Montgomery. I just think this is tremendous value now. It's tremendous value for the next few years. I think it fits the Aaron Judge timeline. So I think I'm loving this so far. I don't have much else to say here. I think if you want to go pitching here, this is who to take. If you're looking at offense, maybe I would have considered Ryan here like an Ian Happ or like a Jorge Soler. Could combo well with an Aaron Judge, but yeah, I'm going with pitching here. Adam, back to you.
Yeah, no, I like the pitching route here, but what I've said to you a million times, and I'll say to you again, the Walker Buehler fanaticism is crazy to me. He was an overperformer while he was healthy. Now he's going to be on the wrong side of 30, while having not pitched in 2 years. Well, I get the concept of a guy coming back and just like being what he was at the front of the Dodgers rotation. It was very appealing. Walker Buehler himself to me is absolutely not. So I'm going to go with another pitcher just like you, but a guy who I think is much more exciting overall, in Mitch Keller. Absolutely loved what he did with his pitch design this past year. Obviously spins the ball like a motherfucker, gets the ball on the ground like a motherfucker. The Pirates hopefully coming up in the next couple of years, Keller can be the ace on that staff. I just like what he does when he gets out on the mound, every 5 days. And, we just, it's sort of all we can ask for. Like I mentioned, the pitching is weak in this class. And to get a guy that I wouldn't feel terrible about throwing out, every start of his is definitely a solid get for me here.
So with my next pick, I'm also going to be taking a pitcher. We're all grabbing one in the 7th round. So for me, this guy, unbelievable strikeout numbers. There are concerns with his hits and his walks, but skyrocketed from rookie ball all the way to AAA to end the year in a single year at 20 years old, and that's Ricky Tiedemann. Just absolutely unbelievable in, let's see, how many innings? 44 innings with a 16.8 strikeout per 9 from rookie ball all the way up to AAA in 1 year. Just absolutely monumental. So I'm a big fan of Ricky Tiedemann. As far as my next pick goes, now this was a little bit of a head scratcher for the other two, but I'm going to be taking Ethan Salas here because in my mind, Francisco Alvarez is going to move to a DH position. And by the time he does that, Ethan Salas is probably going to be ready and he's going to be up. Again, I'm thinking 3-4 years, something like that. So I'm looking at Ethan Salas, not the most fantastic hit tools on earth, but by all accounts, a good hitter, a great defensive catcher. So he's going to get playing time. And I'll pass this back to Adam for his next pick.
But before we go to Adam, I guess maybe I'd love to get both of your guys' thoughts real quickly. If we think Francisco Alvarez is not going to have catcher eligibility 3 years from now, is he worth this high of a pick?
He is. His bat is that good.
I mean, he's a good hitter. He's a good hitter. I don't have any qualms with the Alvarez pick. But taking a defensive first 17-year-old catcher,
60 grade hit and 60 grade power.
He hit great this year, but we're taking 17-year-old catchers. He's still pretty far away.
Again, this is a future play. This is a future play. You got to get the talent that's there. I'd rather have him than some of the other available catchers.
Yeah, totally understand that. But with that, I'll move on to the opposite potentially of Ethan Salas and a young, exciting catching player to an old, not exciting jag of a pitcher in Chris Bassett. He does what he can. He throws like a gazillion different pitches. He works his way through the order. The strikeout numbers are not incredible, but they can pop at times. Again, another guy that I just think can get out there and get people out every time he goes out. His arsenal is so big that he can adjust. I'm higher on the Blue Jays this year than most. I think it really can't go as bad as it did last year for them again. I think he's just a guy to get innings for you, get a couple wins. Ratios are all right, and feel good about Bassett.
Well, I got to say, if we're taking a vote right now on the worst pitching out of the three, it's certainly Graydon's team currently, I would have to say.
We're only through 8 rounds.
Well, he said he's taking a jag in the 8th round.
He's a good jag. The good side of jags.
Okay. Drew?
Yeah, so Bassett's interesting. I would consider personally taking him here if he fell to me right here, but unfortunately he's taken just ahead of me. But that's okay because I'm going to take who I think is a better left-handed prospect than Ricky Tiedemann, and that's Kyle Harrison because he's actually been in MLB. He's actually pitched more than 50 innings in a season, and he's pitched well with great strikeout numbers. So Kyle Harrison's the pick here. And then I'm going to take another young guy. We got to start building out the offense. We've gone pitching heavy, relatively compared to the other teams here. So I'm going to go ahead and take what I consider to be a pretty high floor prospect. I'm talking a lot about floors and ceilings with my draft picks here, but I guess this is what we do. I'm going to go with Jordan Lawler. I think he is a good, just a good young shortstop. I've talked with Graydon about him. I don't want to give away his strategy, but I've talked with Graydon. I've talked with some other guys about him. People are pretty split on what his ultimate ceiling can be, but you're looking at this board, it's him or Bryson Stott, I think, if you're really looking at that middle infield help. And I just like the youth of Jordan Lawler, even though Bryson Stott's he's a young player too. I don't know. I just like Lawler here. So that's my pick. Back to you, Adam.
Yep, and following up right on you, I went straight for Bryson Stott here. Liked what he brought to the table in Philadelphia. Definitely, can hit the ball, good contact guy. Will get on base, doesn't really walk a ton, but just being at the front of that lineup for God knows how many years at this point, it's a ton of runs. He steals a good bit, which definitely needed on this team. So far, I've gone for just dinger central and throwing speed to the wayside, but I like the nice injection that we'll get here with Bryson. Second base as well is a huge bonus. He's not my favorite player in the world, but I like what he brings to the team, runs out the squad really well here.
Yeah, so I'm also going to be taking the shortstop here, and I'm going to be snagging Marcelo Meyer. Now, had a disappointing season last year as far as I'm concerned, and what he did in single A and double A was really kind of rough. I mean, he finished with a 236, 13 home runs, and 9 stolen bases. Now, mind you, that's only with 314 plate appearances. So realistically, he develops, he pans out to what he's supposed to be. He's a possible 20-20, 25-25 guy. No real problems with him on the team, but you do have the risk of he did not have a great year last year. Be really interesting to see where he ends up on those top 100 rankings, to see if he falls a little bit. As far as my next pick goes, I think really overall the weakest position out of these three teams is first base. And it kind of shows that we haven't even taken a first baseman with, up until the 10th round. There's just no one really available who's good. So for my pick, I'm going to go ahead and take Kyle Manzardo. You just have, the age, 23 years old. He's going to get playing time. And we'll see if he develops. He's got some pop. He does not have any speed. But if he can come out and he can hit, 20, 25 homers every year, then he's a decently serviceable first baseman. And first base is definitely, with the exception of the few really high tier guys, it's a pretty lacking position like third base.
Yeah, like Manzardo as a player, had a down year in terms of power last year, but definitely ticked up at the end to show that potential moving forward, and has always been just a great OBP guy at the plate. And in this league, that's a fantastic foundation to have as a player, as that everyday ratio stat in the offensive category. And then to move on to my grade impression, I look at the league, I look at what happened last year, the story, obviously being Adam going reliever heavy to end the year, to solidify the ratios. And with these ace relievers, with which I include Devin Williams in my next pick, to be able to get those regular strikeouts as well as a nice, 0 ERA, 0 whip, a good 3 times a week, is really nice to pop into your order here. So I went with that first reliever off the board. Brewers not looking as fantastic as they have in years past. There's also rumors of them selling, some of their best pieces like Corbin Burns. Would be a little bit concerned there. There won't just be as many opportunities. But I don't think there is potentially a single better, per inning guy in Major League Baseball. So very excited to have this elite closer on the roster.
It's interesting. We're going to have to bring Jack back on the podcast to talk about it. I think he's talked about it once before, though, but this is a while ago. But when it comes to relief pitchers, Jack once told me that when he kind of crunched the numbers a little bit, relief pitchers were responsible for like 40 to 50% of a team's strikeouts in any given week. Just if they're getting 2 to 3 appearances a week and getting 3 strikeouts each time, and you have like multiple of them, I don't know if the numbers shake out exactly like that. I'm kind of just trying to remember here, but the long and short of it is, don't discount relief pitcher strikeouts. Jack's a strong believer in that, and he's obviously done very well in the league. So Devin Williams being grabbed there, great pick, I think. I'm going to turn my attention now to what I think is just a strong fantasy performer in a strong lineup, and that's Sean Murphy. Position eligibility be damned. We'll take the catcher here. That'll be Ryan's only catcher that I believe I consider in this draft. I don't know. Tyler Soderstrom's an interesting name on the board too, but he was tragic last year. He comes up with oh my God, what's Sean Savier's name from last year? The other Oakland A's guy. Can't think of it. Geloff,
Zach
right?
Geloff. Yep.
Zach Geloff. Geloff comes up, is spectacular. He comes up at the same time as Soderstrom. You're thinking, oh, cool, the A's are going to start their young players, and then Geloff takes off and arguably might be a top 100 player in like fantasy leagues this year. And then Soderstrom does the opposite. And yo-yos, goes up and down. He was just tragic. I don't know why I'm going on about Tyler Soderstrom. This is a waste of time. With my other pick here, I'm gonna go with Ian Happ. Just solid player. I think not the youngest, not the oldest. Just seems to fill a need here. Good solid player.
Yep, I'm going to go with a similar strategy here. Anthony Santander fills up the stat sheet for what's going to be a fantastic Baltimore Orioles lineup for years to come. Contact doesn't wow you. The OBP won't wow you, but he'll hit a lot of homers and he'll knock in a lot of guys. And at this point, we're getting to the end of our outfield rotation, and I think that's just a nice footnote to it. But very excited for Santander here, even though he's not the most eye-popping performer in terms of actual baseball skill, but in terms of putting RBI on the stat sheet, will definitely be a contributor.
Very interesting that he has first base eligibility.
Doesn't hurt.
Talk about a need for first base in this league. I wonder if he'll have that next year.
Yeah, that's the big question. With my next, I haven't taken a single outfielder in what is a very strong outfield class. So with my next two guys, the first one is going to be Nick Castellanos. Of course, Pirates' very high-powered offense. I think he, again, like we were describing Corey Seager, I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying he is a floor guy. You know what you're going to get from him. I don't think he's going to be disappointing at all. I don't know what Drew is typing in there. Not the Pirates, lol. Not sure I understand that joke.
You said Nick Castellanos. You just said Nick Castellanos was on the Pirates.
Oh, did I? Phillies. My bad. Speaking too quickly. With my next pick, I'm going to go ahead and take Jake Fraley. Again, Cincinnati supposed to have a very high-powered offense going into next season. He's definitely going to be a big part of that. I would think that if he gives you a 2020 season, which I think is fairly doable for him, then you're very happy with that. Again, two solid outfield guys, nothing crazy, but they're going to put up numbers for you.
Yeah, with my next pick, as I've talked about my pitching before, and sort of leaned on some more boring guys, not as flashy, but, we know who they are. We feel good throwing them out in most matchups. I'm going to do what I refer to as a premium dart throw here in Taj Bradley. Love the stuff, love the team situation, hate the ERA, hate the whip. And that's
hate
how
everything that's
far.
Resulting of his pitching.
I think we're in a dynasty league, and I'm calling it a dart throw in an organization that has proven that they can turn guys around and turn around quickly, especially with, I think if you watch Taj Bradley, everything that he throws leading up to the moment where the bat is swung, I think is great, and it's definitely doable. So I wouldn't be surprised here if he popped and could be like a really premium young pitching asset in this league. I'm not going to say I'm too surprised that he fell this deep with what the numbers actually ended up looking at last year. But in terms of guys who could jump from this position in a draft to being a premium asset that Bean will be trading for in June for like 150 BAM. I think Taj Bradley's the guy.
And now for a guy that I know no one's going to be trading for, Drew, why don't you lead off with your next pick?
I'm going to go and put myself in a Yankees homer's shoe for a second. And I'm going to take sexy Nesty Nestor Cortez.
Nasty Nestor.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. We're taking Walker Buehler. Why aren't we taking Nestor Cortez? It fits a theme. Look, he was good. Was it one good season? Yes. Was it a blip? Yes. Is Yankees ballpark not a great pitching ballpark for some pitchers? Yes. There's a lot of risk here. But you look at the draft board. What do you want me to do instead? Taylor Ward, Dalton Varsho? I mean, look, Nestor Cortez is the pick here, and I'm going to get one more pitcher and then call pitching good and take playoff hero for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Brandon Pfaadt. I was high on him last year. I'm still high on him going into this season, given his postseason heroics. And I feel like I built a pretty good staff here. We got, Walker, Buehler, Paul Skeens, Jordan Montgomery, Nestor Cortez, Brandon Pfaadt. Looks real good to me. I think it's better than what I have. I mean, they're not Brady Singer, but they're certainly guys.
I don't know who that's an insult aimed at, because I'm curious what everyone who's watching this is going to think. But I personally am not a. All right, so Adam, you want to take the next pick?
Yeah, I'll go for it. And again, on the Pfaadt pick, definitely an interesting. If you look at the final numbers, similarly to Taj Bradley, but if you look at the adjustments that he made to get those better results in the playoffs, the moving on the rubber to increase maybe the horizontal approach angle of his pitches, to put on my nerd cap for a minute, really made the sweeper look great. The sinker looked awesome as well. It's always nice to see a young guy make concrete changes that you can go back to and be like, this is why he did better, to make it, feel more repeatable in that way. I'm going to go with a young guy here. Might not make his debut this year, although wouldn't be totally surprised, but I think definitely is a very fantasy-friendly approach and profile. That'd be Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs. One of the best defensive center fielders in the minor league, the best defensive center fielder in the minor league, I'll say. Can run a lot, which my team is still lacking, but definitely some sneaky pop in there. I'd love this guy as the number one prospect in my farm, which it looks like he would be at the start of this league, and would be really excited to see where he ends up.
Yeah, so Langford.
Yeah, I think he'll start the bigs.
That's okay. You think Dylan Cruz
maybe it'll
starts
be like
bigs?
May, but if Pico Armstrong isn't up in July, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. But why?
You're a resident Nationals fan. Does Dylan Cruz start in MLB?
No, I don't think so. I think he gets a cup of coffee at the end of this year. Maybe it's late summer that he gets more of an extended look. I don't think they need to rush him. I don't think they want to rush him unless he blows the cover off the ball all season, which I wouldn't be too surprised about. But I wouldn't count on him breaking in crazy early.
All right, Ben.
Okay. So with my next pick, again, we're going to bolster the pitching a little bit. I'm honestly shocked that there have been so many pitchers taken ahead of this guy. He does have a consistency issue. Sometimes he'll be absolutely amazing, and then sometimes you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And it just does not matter which team it is against, and that's Andrew Abbott. Really high highs and really low lows. Didn't end the year with a terrible ERA, whips pretty high, okay strikeout numbers, okay walk numbers. I think if he can continue to improve and the Reds get a veteran guy in there to disperse some wisdom to these young pitchers, then I really think you can see Andrew Abbott take a step forward. And hey, in the 13th round, I'm extremely happy with that pick. My next guy, he's going to aid me a little bit in the infield again. He's got the dual second base shortstop eligibility, and that's Andres Jimenez. He's going to get everyday playing time with Cleveland. He's got some pop. He's got some speed. And I'm just looking at the projected on Baseball Reference, projected for him for next year, They're talking 16 home runs, 25 stolen bases. Average it out. Let's call him a 2020 guy. Again, nothing to scoff at. Be very happy if you had a 2020 guy to be able to punch into one of those two positions.
Yeah, definitely a usable stat line there. Down year last year, but really, really blew up the year prior. If, like Dean said, if you could find sort of a middle ground there, definitely a usable player, especially at this point in the draft at a premium position like second base. I'm going to continue with my theme of dingers and go with Jorge Soler here. Again, not sure if he'll bring much else to the board besides home runs and RBIs, but for a guy that will either be in my utility spot or on my bench, I feel totally fine with him certainly contributing in those two categories. Love the contact quality, hate the strikeouts, hate the OBP. Again, just another solid piece. Not going to blow anyone out of the water, but if he can hit 30 homers, then that's a guy I'd be thrilled to have.
Sure. Good pick. I think this is pretty quick and easy. We're gonna do only 15 rounds here. So we'll wrap this up soon. And so with the final two picks here for Ryan, I'm gonna go Luis Arias. I just think not a bad player to have in fantasy. And he's on the board, and he's not the most exciting player for fantasy, but yeah, he's there. I think he's a solid pick. And then I'm going to go with another Yankees pick. It's going to say Boston still on this. We'll try to update it before the draft. But, the newly acquired Alex Verdugo, very similar, I actually think, to Luis Arias in a way where, maybe not the most exciting fantasy player, but a decent enough real-life player, tries to hit for a high batting average, will hopefully have some better offensive stats in Yankee ballpark with a better team around him than what he had in Boston. And you know what? I'll argue with anybody about this. I still think he has some prospect shine left. I don't think he's unlocked his full toolkit yet. I don't know. He kind of reminds me of Andrew Benintendi in a way. That Red Sox. I don't know. I think there's some shine left. Adam, we'll go to your final pick.
Yeah, one note on Verdugo before we move on is just playing time. I'm not really. The Yankees have gone out and gotten a lot of outfielders this year for a team that already has Aaron Judge and Jason Dominguez, who should be locked into that outfield for the next, 4 dozen years. So Verdugo can play, can definitely give you, some good OBP stats. Good contact guy. You're sort of banking on the offense there. But I hope he doesn't play, because he's easily the least exciting out of those 4. But if he does, then he'll get you some value there. And then again, for my last pick, there's been some themes so far, one being the Rangers, one being dingers, and the final one being just pitchers who I think are fine. And I'll round it all out with Jose Barrios. Not as flashy. The strikeout numbers aren't where they were in the past, but he's done a really good job at limiting quality of contact. Good sinker ball, keeps the ball on the ground. Again, I think the Blue Jays are a good team. That's sort of all I'm asking for. We're looking for pitching depth, and he is, the definition of, I think, sort of an overlooked, solid depth piece. I'd throw him out in most matchups, especially in ones where you're just looking to get Ks or you're safe in ratios at the end of the week. Definitely feel very strongly about him being, the SP4, I think, on this team, SP5. And, I'd love to see what we can get out of him.
So with my last pick, I'm going to throw a little curveball to what Drew, what we originally spoke about me picking, and I'm going to take a Drew Fowler favorite here, and I'm going to go with Cooper Jerpy. And we all know how bad the Cardinals' rotation is going to be this year. So it may present itself with a situation where this guy could make a jump from single A or double A all the way up to the majors. The whip is a concern with this guy, but the strikeout numbers are extremely strong. The ERA is not bad in single A. Over 41 innings, he had a 3.51. Again, just taking a flyer in the 15th round. We'll see where herpes ends up.
Okay. No, you did have it. It's Cooper Jerpy for all of you guys at home. But that will conclude our mock draft. Will any of this actually happen? Probably not. Is Ryan going to pick Aaron Judge first overall and it's going to throw everything into chaos from the first pick?
Most
Probably
certainly.
not. Almost certainly we're going to have chaos. So yeah, but if you guys made it through all of this, thank you guys for listening. I don't know, maybe I'll post this for people to take a look at, or you guys can just pause the video and look at these if you're curious and want to analyze it or discuss
Now,
it in the group chat. But
I
these are
do
the
have
teams.
one more thing to say, Drew. So, do we have any news as far as like, when trades are going to open up or anything we want to discuss yet, or are we going to be saving that for winter meetings?
Ooh, put me on the spot. Putting both of us commissioners on the spot, actually, because
Absolutely.
obviously
That's
we
what
got
this
Adam here,
podcast
too.
was made for.
No comment on that yet. We've still not ultimately decided what that's going to look like. But we are having discussions on when we should open trades. I would love to hear your guys' feedback. If you guys have thoughts on it, feel free to either DM us, put it in the group me, whatever you guys want to do. Comment on the YouTube video helps the algorithm for sure, right? So yeah, more to come. We'll let you guys know of any news postings. If you haven't checked out the FTN website, it's www.fuckthenats.com. Definitely go check that out. Sub to my YouTube channel. And any final thoughts, Adam?
No, I think my team's better than all of your teams, and I think Graydon's going to be a nightmare in this league with this Texas Rangers squad. But no, thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for participating in this. It's certainly been a lovely time, and we'll catch you all at the draft.
It is good to be back.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.